So we all know that feeling, right? When a simple conversation just sort of takes a turn.
Yeah.
You walk away feeling like you weren't really heard, or maybe things just escalated in a way you didn't mean them to.
Mm-hmm. It happens all the time. Could be at work, navigating something tricky.
Or even with family, or those really frustrating text exchanges that just seem to miss the point entirely.
Exactly. Those back and forths where you feel like you're just talking past each other.
If that sounds familiar to you listening, well, you're definitely not alone.
And it's fascinating, isn't it, how often these conversational breakdowns, they don't seem to come from a bad place, like bad intent.
Right.
It's more often some fundamental mismatch in how we're actually trying to connect. We have so many ways to communicate now.
Yeah, all this tech.
But that truly effective exchange, it can still feel really challenging sometimes.
Absolutely. And that's actually what we're diving into today. We're looking at insights from the book, The Next Conversation. And we want to pull out some really practical strategies, things that can help us navigate those difficult moments and build better communication habits.
Think of it as moving from those draining interactions towards something more like, well, meaningful understanding.
Exactly. So where should we start? What's the first big idea?
Okay, let's start with something pretty foundational. It's this idea of the difference between just transmitting information and actually creating connection.
Okay, transmission versus connection.
Yeah. So much of our communication, especially like online or through texts, emails, social media, it's really focused on just getting the information across. Transmission.
Efficient, maybe.
Efficient, yeah. But it often lacks the emotional cues, the nuance that's just so vital for real understanding.
That's such a key point. I remember the book shares that story, right?
Yeah.
About the author and his mom.
Oh, yeah, the text exchange about the car mileage.
Exactly. What started as a simple question, about the mileage on a white Nissan, it ended up with his mom feeling like he was being difficult or critical.
Even though that wasn't his intention at all.
Not at all. It just shows how easily tone and nuance just get lost when we're only transmitting words without that deeper connection piece.
And that deeper connection, the book argues, it needs two things: understanding and acknowledgement.
Okay, break those down a bit. Understanding and acknowledgement.
So understanding is about really trying to grasp the other person's perspective, like genuinely trying to see things from their point of view.
Stepping into their shoes, so to speak.
Exactly. And then acknowledgement is about showing them that you've heard them, that you've considered what they said.
Even if you don't agree.
Especially if you don't agree, actually. It's not about agreement. It's about validating that you've received their message. Both parts are crucial for feeling truly connected.
And this is interesting. The book suggests a lot of arguments aren't even really about the facts we disagree on.
Right. It's often not the difference in belief itself, but more a failure to understand the difference in perspective that's driving the conflict.
Our brains kind of default to our own viewpoint, don't they?
They absolutely do. It makes it hard to genuinely step into someone else's perspective unless we make a conscious effort. It takes work.
Okay, so understanding that difference between transmission and connection is key. What's next?
Well, that leads nicely into another really important piece for navigating tough talks. Recognizing your own ignition phase.
Ignition phase sounds intense.
It kind of is. The book links it directly to our body's, fight or flight response. When we feel challenged or threatened in a conversation,
okay.
Our bodies react physiologically, very real ways.
Right, we've all felt that sudden rush, heart beats faster, maybe you start talking quicker or your voice gets louder.
Those are the signs. Your ignition phase is kicking in, and the book talks about triggers that set this off.
Triggers, okay.
Yeah, and they can be physical things like someone raising their voice at you.
Sure, that makes sense.
But also psychological factors, threats, real or perceived, to how we see ourselves or how we think others see us.
Like what kind of psychological triggers?
Well, think about things related to, say, social evaluation, that fear of being judged negatively by others.
Okay, yeah.
Or triggers related to our personal identity, feeling like our competence, our intelligence, or maybe our core values are being challenged.
I can see that. If someone questions something you did at work, maybe.
Exactly. That's a personal identity trigger, hitting your sense of competence. Or if someone criticizes something you really believe in, a core value.
You might feel instantly defensive.
Totally. That's a value trigger. And there are also triggers around fear of loss, losing a relationship, status, respect, whatever it might be.
It's really insightful how it breaks those down. Because recognizing those patterns in yourself, that seems really powerful.
It is. And it's not just about you. Once you start understanding your own triggers, you can sometimes begin to notice potential triggers in others too.
And this shifts things, doesn't it, from just reacting or blaming?
To maybe getting a bit more curious, like, I wonder what's driving this reaction, instead of just, why are they being difficult?
Okay, so we know about the ignition phase, the triggers. How do we handle it when it starts happening? How do we cool down?
Right, the cooling phase. This is crucial. And sometimes the simplest thing is the most powerful. Just pausing.
Pausing, taking a beat.
Yeah. When emotions are high, creating just a little bit of space can do wonders. It lets you regulate those intense feelings instead of just blurting something out.
Gives you a chance to choose a better response.
Precisely. And the book actually introduces a technique called the conversational breath.
A conversational breath. Tell me more.
It's a specific way to breathe to calm yourself down in the moment. You inhale through your nose, then take another quick, sharp inhale.
Okay.
And then you exhale slowly, deliberately, longer than the inhale.
Huh. Is there science behind that?
There is, actually. It's sometimes called a physiological sigh. A Stanford study highlighted how this kind of breathing can genuinely help calm your nervous system down quickly.
Wow. So inhale. Quick second inhale, long exhale out.
That's the one. What's happening is it helps rebalance your autonomic nervous system, shifting you away from that fight or flight state.
Towards something calmer.
Toward a more regulated state, yeah. It just gives you that brief window to regain composure before you respond.
That seems really practical. Anything else for that cooling phase?
Another simple thing is just doing a quick scan, like a brief internal check-in during a tense moment.
Checking in with yourself.
Yeah, physically and emotionally. Just notice. Are you clenching your jaw? Is there a knot in your stomach? Shoulders tense.
Becoming aware of the physical signs.
Exactly. Those physical sensations can be signals like, okay, hang on, I need a moment here before I continue.
So it's about awareness first. Pausing, breathing, scanning your body.
By becoming more aware of those internal cues, you can kind of catch yourself before you get too swept up in the intensity.
And choose a more constructive path forward instead of just reacting.
That's the goal.
Okay, this is really helpful stuff. Now let's talk about goals. What should we actually be aiming for in these conversations, especially the tricky ones?
Yeah, this is a big one. The book really challenges that common idea that every disagreement needs a winner and a loser.
The need to win the argument.
Right. That mindset is so ingrained for many of us, but the book argues pretty compellingly that focusing on winning often undermines the very connection we should be trying to build.
You prioritize being right over actually understanding the other person.
Exactly. And the alternative it proposes is, I think, really profound. Approach conversations with something to learn, not something to prove.
Something to learn, not something to prove. I like that.
It's a subtle shift in intention, but it can make a huge difference in how the whole interaction unfolds.
How so?
Well, if you go into a conversation with genuine curiosity, wanting to understand the other person's perspective, even if you totally disagree with it.
It changes the dynamic.
Fundamentally, it opens the door for something more collaborative, less adversarial.
So what would a realistic goal look like then, if it's not about winning?
The book gives some great examples. Maybe your goal is just ensuring the other person feels heard and respected.
Okay.
Or maybe it's gaining a clearer understanding of their viewpoint, even if you don't adopt it.
Just getting where they're coming from.
Yeah. Or acknowledging each other's feelings without judgment. Or even just aiming to both feel heard by the end, whether you reach an agreement or not.
Those feel much more achievable and probably healthier in the long run.
Definitely. They're much more conducive to building stronger relationships than just trying to score points or win.
Right.
Focusing on mutual understanding and respect creates better ground for productive talks, even about tough stuff.
Okay, so as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into the next conversation, let's give people listening something really concrete they can try, like today.
Good idea. How about this? The next time you feel that tension starting to rise in a conversation.
That ignition phase kicking in.
Yeah. Make a conscious choice to just take a deliberate pause, just a moment, collect yourself, and then take one slow, deep breath. Maybe try that physiological sigh we talked about before you respond.
Pause. Breathe. Then respond.
That simple sequence, it can be a powerful circuit breaker in those heated moments. It gives you that critical space to shift from just reacting
to responding thoughtfully.
Exactly.
That's a great actionable tip, and maybe one final thought to leave everyone with.
How about this? Just consider for a moment how fundamentally different your conversations and maybe even your relationships might become if you consistently tried to approach them with a genuine desire to understand rather than that deep-seated need to be right.
Shifting focus from being right to understanding.
Yeah, it's a shift that could be, well, more transformative than you might initially think.